Beware Romulans bearing gifts.
Hi, this is Eric.
This is Carl.
And this is Caleb.
And welcome back to this Romulans Bearing Gifts. It is episode 66, don't you know? Obviously, the year that Star Trek debuted on our televisions. But we are finally here to close out Picard Season 3 with our final two episodes, 9 and 10, Vox and The Last Generation. But just before we get into that, Caleb, any thoughts on the final eradication of Vadic in our previous episodes?
Yes. Wait, was that in Surrender? Damn.
Surrender was episode 8.
Wow, I didn't realize that she died in that one, but no, yeah, I was kind of disappointed more after the fact. Like at the time, I was like, okay, we're killing her and we're moving up to the next boss. I'll say in retrospect, I wish that she had stuck around longer. But I think the death itself was well done, and I liked her just breaking up like that. I thought that was a good effect, so I could appreciate that. And I liked her whole little confrontation with Jack there. I think that was all pretty well done too. But it's been a little while since I watched it, so not super fresh in my memory.
Well, there you have it. And here we go. So Vadic is taken out, and it's a mini cliffhanger, I suppose, at the end of Surrender, because Deanna Troi accepts her mission to speak with Jack and to just try to get to the bottom of what's going on with him or what he's been seeing or experiencing. And so we pick up with that at the start of Vox, and Deanna guides him through like his visions, and she eventually comes up with a startling discovery and is very afraid and goes off to tell Jack's parents before she can tell Jack. Did either of you guys, like, at what point did it click for you who the big bad was going to be? Like, did you have any notions prior to this episode, or was it kind of like in real time?
For me, it was in real time, yes. And I was hoping against hope once I started getting inklings, like, oh no, wait a minute, is this what I think it's going to be? And I was hoping that it wasn't going to be that, and then, yeah, that's what it was. But sorry, Carl, go ahead.
No, that's exactly, because what happened is we were discussing this when we were trying to figure out why would there be, like a different kind of changeling species, and we were trying to tease out what the deal was with her. There was the inkling that maybe there was some Borg influence at that time, but Caleb, I was with you. I was like, let's not go there. Let's not go there. We've got an interesting storyline here, a novel direction that everything's heading in. We don't need to go back to the Borg here. And so when we found out it was the Borg, I was a little bit disappointed. I love the Borg. I think the Borg is cool, but I was hoping they would have done something a little bit different here.
Yeah, and I'm curious if this show takes place a lot further away than I realized, because at one point someone says a line, and they're like, "Oh, the Borg haven't been seen or heard from in over a decade," and I was like, "What?" But they played a somewhat major role in both the first two seasons of Picard.
Yes.
So I was like, "What the heck?"
Pointed out by many a YouTube channel. I believe it was Shaw. It was either Shaw or Seven who made that statement early on this season. But apparently, no, this is supposed to take place, I'm pretty sure, about a year after the climatic events of season 2. I believe it's been approximately a year. Apparently, when Shaw or whoever makes that statement, they're referring to the real Borg, quote unquote.
Yeah, like a Federation-wide attack on them. That was my guess too.
Well, that and not like this faction, which supposedly that's who the season 2 Borg were.
No.
Oh, okay.
Offshoot. They weren't the main Borg
No.
crimes or whatever.
Nope. Because
So that's supposedly the explanation for that. But early on, when we were trying to theorize, like back when we were like in episode 3 or 4, trying to figure out who the big bad could be, I guess just in my mind, I just kind of eliminated the Borg from the possibilities because of how heavy they were in season 2, and of course used to some degree even in season 1 as well. So I just thought, no, they would be too obvious, like they're too recent. So I just never really considered them, like I never took that seriously, like the possibility,
right.
which I think is why I was so blindsided. And the obvious clues or totems or whatever they are, like the red door and the vines, like those things that were kind of in your face that something weird was happening with Jack, I couldn't make rhyme or reason of those things on their own. Now, when you already have seen the whole season and you go back and watch the entire season again, like I have, once you know it's the Borg, the signposts are everywhere, like throughout the whole entire season. It's just, they're impossibly difficult to recognize without already knowing the answer, if you know what I mean.
So, all right, we talked about this. You and me, Eric, talked about this in the last episode. Caleb, if you want in on this, let me know. I had an issue with the red door, right? Specifically the red door. Well, it was my impression that the concept of the red door was Jack's psychological interpretation of some barrier that he was keeping between he and, the Borg influence, right? Psychological interpretation. Now, one, we see Vadic make a direct reference to the door in your mind. Now, Eric, we let it go, and you said that, like you said, that it was supposed to be, she just got lucky with a hypothetical, description of a block in his mind and using the door. Now, we got Troy here. Now, we're going to again assume that Troy can do, because with her, empathic powers, which is even more powerful than I recall, now she can see like a mind meld into what people's psyches are. All right, I'm letting that go. So she is seeing directly Jack's interpretation of what's going on. So once again, the red door, I'm assuming, is Jack's interpretation. It's not an actual door in his mind, but is an interpretation of what's being said, being seen. Now we got the vines that are coming in here. Now the red vines, do you see how far around he goes, tracking what the potential of the vines could be? Now, the door is crystal clear. He had that right away. He's known what that was. But the vines required him going through childhood, arboretum, images of his childhood with his mom, flowers, and then finally comes back around. It just seems too convoluted for this to have been either a clear block in his mind that he psychologically constructed, or something that would be so easy that other people could be able to interpret it. It's just that it's causing me problems in terms of reconciling what's going on.
I'm tracking for the most part with what you were saying. However, one thing I'm not 100% sure about, because like you said, it seems like Deanna's power is on another level now. Like she's practically mind melding or going in the Matrix mentally with Jack. I'm not sure if that's and I don't think it really matters one way or the other, like if I'm right or wrong about what I'm about to say. I'm not sure if that's actually what's happening, if she's literally going into his mind and stepping into his world like it's the holodeck, or if it's like something they did in Doctor Who Series 9 or something, or they kind of did in Sherlock at some point, the Moffat Sherlock, which is what we are seeing isn't an actual thing. It's just like a visual representation, like a Mind Palace concept.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not sure if it's just like artistic license of giving us a visual of her stepping into his mind. But I don't think it matters either way. I'm just saying it's unclear to me if she really is like joining up with him in that way, or if it's just. But it doesn't matter.
Okay, all right. Now the reason I'm bringing this up is because now you said that if you go back and look at the hints that were there for him throughout this, throughout the season, that it was the Borg's influence. This has been the primary bridge between Jack and the Borg Queen. How did you see that red vines and a red door were Borg? What was it about that implied that it was Borg to you?
To me,
Yes,
almost nothing.
Well, didn't you say that if you look back throughout the season that it was?
Oh no! It wasn't those. Those weren't the images I was referring to when I said that. When you go back and from to the very beginning, you'll notice all these lines of dialogue, where Jack will say like, I never felt like I belonged here, or I feel like I have like a different calling, or I've never connected with anyone really. It's like there's tons of these lines like that are littered throughout like the whole entire season.
All right.
I've never been one to go with the flow, whatever. But a weird thing about the vines, because the vines and doors specifically, I have no idea how that specifically relates to the Borg. But I saw it pointed out elsewhere that if you go back and watch First Contact and you watch like the opening titles, where it says like Star Trek, First Contact. When the word First Contact comes up in whatever font, it appears, and then it starts to get covered with red vines, the letters.
Huh.
And somebody made that, and who would have ever remembered that?
Yeah, that.
And then even I almost had to. I did go back and watch it after I heard that, and then it makes one wonder, why is First Contact getting covered with red vines?
Right.
Like, I don't even know what that's about.
Right. Because that does not appear to be one of the main Borg infection ways. I don't remember any red vines. I mean, I remember the black orb.
Go back. It's really there.
Okay.
One of many baffling choices in that movie.
Yeah.
But just on the concept of Troy seeing that, I was happy to see her getting a little bit of a spotlight in the season. But I was like, no, this again doesn't feel really right to what her powers were before. And it was also making me think about when we keep seeing the red eyes thing going on with Jack and any people that he like possesses. Is that something that people see as well, or is that another thing that's just us for the audience? Like what is that?
At first, I would have assumed their eyes were literally changing color, but now I'm not really sure. Now it feels like a toss-up to me.
Mm-hmm. That Jack's ability was also something I had to kind of unpack back over the episodes. It is my assumption that Jack can only control those who have been DNA transporter melded with Picard's, with Picard's infection. I believe, right? I mean,
I didn't even consider that, but that would make sense.
Yeah,
right. Because I can't imagine that he just magically has this ability that he could affect people his entire life before that melding with the Borg.
Oh, and this explains why his vision went extra haywire when he saw people go through the transporter.
Yeah, there you go.
In episode 5 or 6. Because remember, that's how it was like put into the younger crowd.
Nice. Yeah, I forgot because we couldn't figure out what the significance of that because he was about to run. So that's
Somehow this is all a commentary like on TikTok and social media, and the transporter represents like TikTok and younger generations. But I'm not even going to go there right now.
No.
Yeah, I did think it was funny that only the younger folks were the ones getting assimilated there.
It's the perfect setup, considering like especially the last generation. And the older folks who we're obviously focusing on in this entire season, like it's the perfect setup as to why you need the older folks to be around. Mm-hmm. So that
it is a tremendously thoughtful season. I mean, I'm nitpicking about this stuff because everything else, there is a real depth and care into how they chose to do so many things in this season that I'm really, really impressed with. That's why, this kind of thing's kind of jumping out at me like, well, what about that? Because everything else, for the most part, feels really nice. The choices that they made and the subtlety and the respect that they have for past stories, past characters, and all of that. So it was just one thing. I just wanted to get back to your Borg thing.
I mean, I agree with you, and you and I did a bunch of glowing in our previous episode on Picard. However, as we keep going in this discussion, I've kind of had some new thoughts, but I'm not ready to share those yet. New thoughts on Picard season 3 as a whole, but
Yeah,
we'll get to that.
I just want to jump in because you guys don't have to give your initial thoughts, but I'll say, as someone who has really turned around on this season, I came in skeptical because of the previous two, and then I was just completely sold. Like, wow, this is something really different. The fact that we once again have to just go to this well of the Borg and the Borg Queen, at this point, it just feels like, man, are we ever going to get away from this stuff? And it just it kind of it doesn't sour this season, and I think in these 2 episodes there's still tons of great stuff. But it's just like, oh, it feels like they subverted my expectations in a way that I found negative. And even the Borg Queen stuff, they did do some cool things with it. But I'm so done with that character. I never really liked it to begin with, but at this point, it's just like, man, I hope this is the end for her, but probably not.
You know, we have Girardi.
I was about to say we got another one.
Oh no, yes.
But with what Caleb just said, I'm probably like an 85-90% agreement with what you just said, to be honest. And I just kind of was thinking about that as I was rewatching the episodes again today. It doesn't take away from my overall appreciation of the season or these episodes in particular, but it's definitely not something I'm a fan of, that we went to the Borg well yet again.
Yeah. No, I agree.
Yeah, and to unfortunately jump over to one more negative, I will say as well, because I remember you guys early on were really on board with Captain Shaw and really liking what he was doing. And it took me a little bit to really get what the character was going for, and by the time I did get it, I started to really like him. And then it just felt like maybe in the last 4 episodes or so, I started to be like, oh, like they're really pushing this guy to the side. He's not really taking part in almost any of the planning. It's just all these older folks. And then to see him dispatched so kind of casually, I was like, oh, there was so much potential here with this guy, and I just feel like he was ultimately kind of wasted.
You got Boba Fetted. Yeah, Caleb, in the episodes that you were not with us on, I think we couldn't stop saying that enough about
I know.
Shaw.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
You're just reinforcing. We had an extended conversation about this, and we agree 100%. We agree. Shaw is probably one of the most interesting new characters they've had in Picard, period, all 3 seasons. And I'm 100% with you that, one, I thought they, killed him off a little unceremoniously. He's better than his final line. And, there was so much more potential with him. I would have loved to seen he and Seven going on to a new series together.
And I kept kind of holding out because I was like, I feel like they're setting him up. Maybe this is just his introduction. That's why they're not doing too much with him. But maybe in his own series, he'll really shine.
Yep.
Yeah.
And so to see that, I was like, oh no.
And I hope this is not a potential spoiler, what I'm about to say. It may never happen. But I know that Terry Matalas said in an interview after the finale went out, should there be a Star Trek Legacy series or whatever they want to call it, should they continue the voyages of the Titan / Enterprise, should that happen, Terry Matalas says he has like a backdoor explanation or way that Shaw returns, and he left it at that.
No.
I don't know if that'll ever happen. I don't know if there'll be a legacy show, but that's what Terry Matalas said.
I think it's necessary. Honestly, I think I am willing to suck up whatever, corny way that they can get him back. But I think it is necessary because his character was just so strong. I'll be willing to put up with, Transporter Echo, clone, some crazy crap. I'll take it because I just want to see that guy again. He was
yeah, they dropped his body on the Genesis planet.
Yeah, I'll take it.
I agree.
Yeah.
One of the greatest things, because it's one of the rare examples of new Trek pushing boundaries, but where fans appreciate the boundary that is getting pushed. in terms of characterization or whatever, like something that feels really new and fresh and great at the same time.
Yeah, and there's even parts from that reminded me of a certain character that got a name drop in this episode with the USS Pulaski. I appreciated seeing that.
Yeah, cranky Pulaski.
Again, I'm a huge fan of her retroactively. I don't know why no one else is on the same page with me, or seemingly.
I'm there with you.
I was never a fan of Pulaski. I never liked Pulaski, but I recognized her need. Just like, but see, Shaw does it with some style, right? Pulaski was just arbitrarily cranky. And so I knew why they needed her in the Next Generation era to come in and, break up the happy, camper family. It was necessary, but the way she did it, she did not endear herself to me. Shaw does. Shaw makes rational sense with the things that he's saying and things he's doing.
I mean, you are correct, Carl, in what you're saying, the differences between Shaw and Pulaski. Yet, and the reason I say retroactively, because I didn't have that many thoughts about Pulaski at the time when it was airing. But when we go back, or when I go back now and watch episodes from that season in particular, I just can't believe how over the top she seems to me now, especially in that perfect cookie cutter Next Generation world.
Mm-hmm.
She is so out of left field, and I just wasn't aware of it at the time the way I am now when I watch it as an adult.
Mm-hmm.
And so it just kind of blows my mind. Even though what you said about Shaw is true, he is more endearing.
Yeah.
It's just I just can't believe it happened under Roddenberry's reign.
Well, that was the beginning of things going away from Roddenberry. Because, look, think about what those seasons. All right, we're going on a tangent, but this is Next Gen. So if we think about the original, early seasons of Next Gen, Roddenberry had a strong, influence and, no conflict among the crew members. Everybody was supposed to be happy and, the best of humanity, all of that. That can get boring and that can start to feel artificial. And while I do believe that there was more that they could have explored with that potential, the need for, I won't say all out conflict, but just stronger differences in opinions was necessary in Next Gen. So, the crew that was starting to sneak that in came in with Pulaski. They were doing some other things to try to shake things up among the crew members that were contrary to what Roddenberry imagined for Next Generation, and it was necessary because we look back at the first couple of seasons of Next Gen. If they had continued with that, things would not have been great. So
yeah, and it's kind of funny now, tying into real world for a second. It kind of reminds me at my job during COVID times. We had a head of medical, and we had the warden who's obviously in charge of the show. And I used to be in staff meetings, and the head of medical would speak with such audacity to the warden's face. Like, no, we have to quarantine for this much. We have to do this. We have to vaccinate with this much time, or the vaccination is no longer usable. And da-da-da. And I would just sit there in the meetings in the corner of the room and just be like, oh my God. How did she just talk to the warden like that? It's so crazy. She's like the real life Pulaski.
Well, the doctors get that authority, though. When it's their expertise and why they're hired there, they get authority. So that's when you get to pull your rank, you sit there and you don't say anything any other time. But that's her area of expertise, so she gets to speak then. Just like Bones outranks the captain on many issues. So yeah, makes sense.
Yeah, it's just crazy. But all right, so Jack finally learns the truth about what Deanna saw. He has like a confrontation with his parents because in his mind it serves. I don't know how now when I'm trying to think, but somehow it serves the better good for him just to quote unquote turn himself in, like give in to this calling. And somehow he knows he's not going to do anything wrong because he knows himself. And so, he just has to confront it. Obviously his biological parents are completely against it. But then he just goes off and does it anyway. Was this a rational decision for him to take off and just kind of seek out this calling?
Yeah, it felt like one of those moments when you're just supposed to accept that the character has like gone out of their mind a little bit. Like that's the only way that I mean, maybe you guys see something different, but I couldn't really track it.
Me personally, I can't separate the out of universe reasons. I can't help but see the mechanics of the script. Like,
Yeah.
you have to, get to the next echelon of the story. Then you have to get to the stakes. And so this is like this has to happen. It's a fixed point. Like, this turn has to happen no matter what, because then you would have no finale. So I can't personally separate my mind from thinking that to take it in universe, because in universe it seems completely insane. In universe, they should just strap him to a chair, and lock him in a cave and wait for Frontier Day to pass.
Yeah, and Jack was another one that it maybe took like 2 or 3 episodes for I like the actor from the start, but to get on board with the character and his kind of plight. And this was another big example of the kind of subverting expectations of. I feel like they were developing the plot really well up to a certain point, and then we get to this point, and it's just like, okay, we kind of need a light switch to happen where he just decides to, for not much reason, maybe just his self-exploration is the only justification of him. Like, I guess I have to have this answered in order to be able to move forward. But yeah, I did not find it satisfying the way that they put this together.
And if I do try to imagine him being a 21 or 22-year-old, because the actor certainly does not look 21 or 22 to me, so
Yeah.
I have to assume my eyes are lying. But if I pretend he actually is a 21, 22-year-old, I guess that makes it more plausible, because 21, 22-year-olds are known for
Rebellious behavior.
yes, that, but also once they have their course laid in, good luck trying to get them out of that. Like, you just can't when someone's that age. Like, once their mind is set on something, no matter what arguments, no matter how you try to bring them to rationality, it's nearly impossible.
Yeah, and what's unfortunate as well is once he does go and join up with the Borg Queen, he kind of stops being a character for a long time, and he's just someone to be saved. And he becomes a plot device. It's like, oh, that's not at all what I thought they were going to do with this plot.
What did you think they were going to do?
I thought that it was going to come down to him having to make these, to figure it out for himself, not just kind of fall into a machine.
Okay, yeah.
And just become a plot device. So, because it seemed like such smart writing throughout, and I feel like some of this stuff, I don't know if it's rushed or just. I don't know what it is. It feels quite different than the first 8 episodes.
They were very careful, very meticulous, very smart. I mean, just look at the peril. The whole idea of the changeling and Borgs co-opting the transporters to slowly assimilate stuff. That is brilliant.
Yeah.
I mean, as a plot device, as in something that we have not seen before, as a totally plausible kind of attack, that is really, really good. And like you were saying, up to the first 8 episodes, they were taking a lot of care to create some very interesting misdirection and taking us in places that maybe we hadn't seen before. I am in agreement with you, Caleb, about what's happening here with the last 2 episodes. Things felt a little rushed, and I'm going to come back to this because this is going to echo something that Eric and I have talked about in the past. Things felt a little rushed here, and I thought that was unfortunate. Eric, you were asking, how did Caleb think that the Jack situation was going to resolve? They had done such a great job throughout this season of taking us in plausible but novel directions. Characters that we knew, story arcs that we knew. I was hoping that they were going to be able to, even like I said, the idea of the transporter assimilation was so novel and interesting. I expected a resolution or a challenge to it to be on par with the novelty of the problem, and I cannot say that is what we saw. That's not how things went. So yeah, I felt that too.
Yeah, that's kind of how I felt too, but I didn't feel it in the moment. I mean, when these episodes first came out, I mean, I felt it a little bit under the surface, but these thoughts kind of solidified for me much more as time has passed since these episodes came out.
And when you say these episodes, are you talking about the last two, or are you
the last two?
The last two.
Like
Okay.
what you just said, what you just spoke to, like. I was kind of along for the ride for the most part. I could feel these little undercurrents, but I didn't really pay much mind to them until days and weeks started to pass after the finale aired.
Okay.
And that's something that's interesting also, I should have said at the start about doing this review of these two episodes so far removed from the time of airing, because a lot of things I've said and things I will say that I haven't said yet, I probably would not have said if we had recorded within 1 week of the last episode going out. But because I've had so much time to marinate on things, I have a much more nuanced take. And
I'm curious, Eric, because I know you follow that. Is it TV Time app or some Star Trek groups or something? You seem closer connected to their opinions than me.
Yeah, multiple things.
Were these episodes received well, or with the rest of the series, or were they?
Now, bear in mind, those same sources were suffering from the same thing, which is they were reacting, within 24, 48 hours of seeing the finale. So they didn't have, long-term reflection. I would say they were mostly very well received.
Oh, okay.
Like almost surprisingly well received to me. Certainly a lot of those sources felt that, certain episodes, especially in the latter half of the season, that certain episodes were like the best Star Trek they had seen, like since DS9. Yeah, it was mostly quite positive. I did not see much negativity at all, really.
Yeah, because I was curious if some of it was just me, because I know that First Contact is received as one of the best of the Star Trek movies, at least of the next gen stuff. And I've always had a very different opinion than most people for that. So I just wondered if that was some of my own bias seeping into this finale. But
yeah, but you're starting to infect me like a Borg queen, because I know I had never heard you say that until, like, I don't know, 2 months ago, or I don't know when it was the first time it really registered to me that you didn't like First Contact. And then I was watching some of it when the 4K, I didn't get through the whole movie, but I watched a fair amount of it, and I had like your voice like over my shoulder.
Oh no!
It was like really ruining the experience, because I've always considered it, quite up there as well in terms of Star Trek movies, and I just started noticing all these things you were talking about, like jokes the cast make in the movie that I remember being really funny back in 1996 or whenever the movie came out. Like, I remember like just eating those jokes up, and then I was kind of like wincing at a lot of them now, thanks to you.
Oh.
And I was thinking about what you were saying about how their characterizations had changed so much from the episodic adventures, and it is really obvious to me now what you were talking about. So it's kind of weird. But so the Titan finally shows up to Earth, Frontier Days getting underway. Oh man, and now like shit really starts to hit the fan. I mean, we get to see the Enterprise F that made a lot of fans happy, because it basically canonized a digital model that has existed for quite some time now. So that model was not just created for this show. I guess it's existed in the Star Wars, in the Star Trek, like the Starship combat game. I've never really played it.
Yep.
But I guess that is like the F has existed in that iteration already in that game, and they largely reference the original model with some minor alterations. So overall, fans seem to be super appreciative. Well, they were appreciative until it didn't exist anymore.
Well, do we know that it doesn't exist? We got commandeered, or
Well,
yeah.
it just seems weird that there would be an F and G flying around at the same time. Oh, but also it was supposed to be its retirement.
Was it?
Yeah.
Are you sure?
I'm pretty sure. Like it was before shit hit the fan. It was supposed to be like its final run, like its swan song, because it had already served for like 9 or 10 years or something under Captain What's Her Nose.
Or Admiral.
Or Admiral Easter Egg from Best of Both Worlds.
So
it had supposedly been on adventures already for like 9 or 10 years or something.
Oh, okay.
And so it was like it was supposed to be like its retirement ceremony.
Look, we've had this discussion before also. There seems to be an inconsistency with the design of the looks of the ships and what era they're from. Because, we already had an extended conversation about how the Titan does not look like a newer version of these Starfleet ships. And like I said, I had retconned it because we know that we lost the space dock, the Utopia Planitia, because of the androids, and I assume that they had retrofitted a legacy system that became the Titan. So that's I'm trying to reconcile that in my mind, but I'm looking at that Enterprise, Shelby's Enterprise, and then I'm looking at the Titan, and I'm going, I don't think the Titan looks newer, and more modern compared to the.
Oh, certainly not. Certainly not.
I appreciate the video game canon, and I thought it was a really cool design. A lot of the game canon ships are popping up in Picard, and the people are very excited about that. And I think they're beautiful. I like them. But I'm having a real hard time reconciling the eras of, when one is supposed to be versus
There
another.
is definitely an era issue, and extended into, if we get into Discovery and to some degree Strange New Worlds, there's definitely an era issue when it comes to ship design. But specifically as it pertains to like the Titan and the Enterprise F, I don't know how much of car buffs you guys are, but I would liken it to, you could choose many different car make models, but I'll just like the Mustang of the 60s. And you saw a progression design where it got grander and bigger, kind of like the Enterprise and TNG era. I mean, how it evolved. It was getting bigger and sleeker from the mid 60s to the late 60s into the early 70s. But then in 74, I think it was, and this is because of the gas crisis in the United States, in the world, blah, blah, blah. But in 74, they came out with like the Ghia Mustang, which was like supposedly supposed to evoke like European design. And if you look at a timeline of Mustang designs, it takes an extreme downturn when they went from 73 to 74, and where they went completely backwards, and like visually the legacy was like completely destroyed. And that's kind of how I see the Titan. I'm not saying the Titan's ugly. I'm just saying it's just such a left turn departure like that in terms of design. And I mean, of course, they even call it a Neo Constitution, like in the first or second episode. But
I hear it, and what you're saying is, what I got to live with. But just by my eye, everything else, I can just feel it, and it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, and my headcanon to add on to what I think your retcon, I think, is brilliant. But my piece that I connect to yours is that the E and F and even the D were, grandiose flagships, like the finest Starfleet had. And I really see the Titan as much more of a workhorse, or the Neo Constitution as much more of a workhorse. It's not more utilitarian, and so I just kind of see it as that's what it was designed to be. And so the moniker is just transferring from a line of flagships to just a regular old, kind of like how the A was, how it came out, how the A debuted when you had something like the Excelsior existing. It's kind of how I see the Titan.
Yeah. All right. Well, I just everything else visually seems to make so much sense to me, and I have to work very hard to reconcile the Titan Enterprise relative to the other vessels. That's the only thing. It's just, it's like I said, not that it's ugly, but it's something about the look of it seems very asynchronous.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. It doesn't throw me as much, even though I agree with what you're saying.
Mm.
Now, stuff goes sideways real quick, and like, I think there's going to be an ongoing theme of recognizing the amazing writing that's transpired up to this point in the season, and then to have these moments that seem ill thought out or rushed. Like, you already back when they hinted at it, like perhaps that was in episode 1. How could it ever be a good idea to put all your ships in the same place at the same time? Like, we don't even do that on the terrestrial Earth in modern times, but we're talking about a quadrant of the galaxy, and to put all your ships in one place seems like one of the most dangerous things you could possibly do. There's that. And then, of course, with the help of Jack's broadcast abilities, all the 25 and unders get activated. There's like a complete takeover, and even those humans, the ones who are older generation, can't control the ships because now they're all linked. It's a complete shit show. Why'd you say
Oh, just with the synchronization and all the fleet being there, I was starting to be like, oh no, this feels like this is going really wrong with this part.
Yeah, and just to make it worse, so this seems like what I'm about to say seems like it just may be one of these issues in Paramount Plus land, like extending beyond Picard, because you would assume, there's currently 4 Star Trek shows if you include the animated adventures. There's at least 4 right now, and you would think that the executive producer, showrunner guy, Alex Kurtzman, or somebody would kind of have a hand in all the shows, even if they're not pulling the strings directly, but would be in on meetings, and they would understand what the different parts of Trek are doing, the different shows. Because another unfortunate thing, in my opinion, about what happens with this calamity on Frontier Day is that if you've been watching all the other current Paramount shows, Star Trek, in Lower Decks, near the end of the last season, there was a plot where the Federation, the Starfleet, was testing out drone starships. I think they were the Texas class, where they're full size, fully operational starships, but they have no physical crew. They're all run by some sort of AI or something, autonomous. And in this episode, it all goes to hell in a handbasket because, of course, they all get out of the Starfleet's control and they all like group up and go rogue. And so that was like a significant development that happened. And there was this whole plot because there was like I'm going off of memory. This aired several months ago now, but I think there was like an evil admiral who like put like all this research into this technology and sold the Starfleet on this drone situation, and it all backfired because like the drone fleet rebelled or was not rebelled, not sentiently, but I think was just used against Starfleet. So there was that whole plot. And then in Prodigy, spoiler for that if you haven't seen it, and me and Carl talked about it previously on this feed, there's this whole plot of this virus like infecting all the Federation ships and turning them all against each other.
Oh wow.
And then you have this finale, and that's what I don't like. How can all 3 shows hit this type of dilemma within a calendar year of each other? Like, wasn't someone like Kurtzman, again, sitting in our meetings go, hey, wait a second, this sounds like what Lower Decks is doing. Oh, really? Oh, that's what we're doing at Picard too. Like, would someone raise their hand and say, maybe we should differentiate? Like, these things sound all a little bit similar to each other. I don't know if it bothered you, Carl, but it just bothered me.
Yeah, we need a Favreau, Filoni team to keep to ride over all of these seasons, all these series, to make sure that they are not yeah, I sense that too. I thought of Prodigy first. I totally forgot
Because
about
aside from it being bad timing, how could the Federation and Starfleet keep making these incredible blunders over and over again?
the same danger of infection.
Like, don't you see what's wrong with networking everything?
Yeah. Well,
It was funny, Riker and Picard being like, them synchronizing all the ships. It's so Borg-like. How ironic. I was like, oh boy, they're calling it out.
I was almost going to say that, but then I didn't.
yeah.
I was going to say, and this is just a joke, I'm sure it's not the case, but maybe it's Kurtzman himself bringing that stuff over. Just keeps reusing the same ideas. That's what you should do for your season. Oh, I just did on the other show? Who cares? No one's paying attention.
And again, with this development in the plot now, and this is going to be an ongoing theme until we get to the end, is that I can't separate my out-of-universe thoughts with my in-universe eyes are seeing. Because this whole calamity seems like it all should have been avoided. It seems like, despite the changeling incursion and the transporter DNA sequencing, it still seems like this should have been avoidable somehow. But it wasn't. Fine. And then once the shit hits the fan and GD, the damn Titan's going to get taken over again. We just had that 2 episodes ago.
Yep.
And now we have zombie crew. And yeah, I don't like this. I mean, I don't know how else to say it. It just seems lazy and unoriginal for the crew to get taken over. And then also fast forward to have it all resolved and to have virtually 0 casualties. That seems another bridge too far for me as well. But whatever.
And I think another really, just poor choice on their part was they did such a great job setting up all these new characters, Jack, Shaw, the 2 Geordie daughters, and then they're all essentially out of the picture in this 2-parter, just so that we can focus solely on the next gen crew.
Well, exactly, and that's where I was going with my out-of-universe brain, because my out-of-universe brain is like, yes, this all seems ridiculous, but it obviously serves the purpose, the intention of Metalis, presumably, which is isolate our elders and make them the focal point. And that's what it does. It's just, it doesn't have any nuance like we were discussing earlier in the season. It just seems blatantly obvious.
Little pieces of nuance remain.
Yeah.
In terms of, like we talked about, it was a good idea to have the seniors separated from the kids with the virus. I mean, that is plausible and a subtle way to make this make sense. I saw where they were going with the disconnected ships, and then having to go back to the museum. I saw where that was going. I didn't know the D was going to be there, but I kind of figured that they were, Geordie and crew was going to run back to there because those are the ones that were disconnected. Now, my real shock is that they only took 1 ship. You got the entire Starfleet under attack from and you've got an entire museum full of ships with unique capabilities. I would have droned up some of those suckers and taken the whole fleet back with me. But again, it made sense.
There was a throwaway line, I think, in the Last Generation, the episode 10, where they said that it was the only fully operational starship that was not interconnected. That was the D. So there was that throwaway line of why it had to be that ship and only that ship.
Well, I'll take it. Is not quite sure why that would be the case, seeing that they were much older vessels than that there. But
again, not fully operational, I suppose, is what they're implying for the older ships.
Like I said, I'll take it. I'll take it. Yeah, I'll take it.
And how did the impact of them reuniting with the ship hit you guys? Were you taken by it?
I thought it was great. I mean, I thought it was great. Now, I am 100% with Eric in terms of there are 3 contexts that are being maintained all the time. One is the in-Trek story consistency. 2 is where does the story have to go, and 3, there is the emotional ride of what they were doing. All right, These 3 things we're always bouncing around, and I am willing to compromise on one or two, as I move through different moments. I thought it was a very emotional and a very beautiful moment. I mean, again, everything that had been engineered to bring our old crew together for one last adventure, we're letting it go, the convenience of that. But the fact that finally the whole crew was together for one last romp to save the galaxy, there's no way that they could do that without the D, right? They'd gone so far to bring everybody back together that, of course, the final cherry on top would be that they got to do it. Old crew, old band together, the old ship that comes together. The symmetry of that is what sold it, and I found it very emotional to see them all together and on the ship again. Again, I know it was convenient. I could see where it was going. All of that. But still, that moment was very, very touching for me when I saw it. So yeah, I thought that was like I said, I will allow the convenience of it. I will allow, how everything sort of conveniently comes together to make that happen. But it was a powerful, powerful moment for me to see them all together again and on the bridge of the D.
Yeah, once again, I almost completely agree with what everything Carl just said. But I will add that, again, I don't know why I keep qualifying this, but when both of these episodes came out and I watched them fresh first time, I was so much more sold on them. Like I had little nagging issues, but they were quite insignificant at the time. It's only been with distance and me thinking on it more, do I guess come off as more skeptical or negative on these episodes. But at the time, most everything was great. Like the experience, the ride of watching the episodes. And as it pertains to the D in particular, I had heard rumors. There was rumors early on and throughout that the D would make an appearance. But those weren't substantiated rumors. No one knew if that was really going to happen. People wondered, was it just going to be like a holodeck scene or something like that? And certainly no one really predicted what it was going to be until it was imminent. So it was kind of like the feeling I had with Spider-Man No Way Home. And I'm sorry if you haven't seen that movie yet and I spoiled it for you, but
spoilers.
I had heard all those rumors about that movie. And even though I was quite well aware that it was probably going to happen, that we were going to see certain casting choices, I still refused to fully believe it until I literally saw it with my own eyes. And then I let all the emotions run with Spider-Man. And that's kind of what happened with me with the D. Like, I didn't really think it was going to happen until it happened. And then I think it had the proper effect as intended on me, by design. Like, I'd had all the feels. And just like how Carl explained it, that was exactly kind of like my thought process. And I also thought it was really smart for them to hold back at least enough that when we visited the station earlier in the season, that they still kept this a secret. I don't know. They probably wanted to show it off already, I mean, just even if it was just docked there like the other ships. So I thought that was a wise choice.
Remember, Alondra almost spilled the beans. Because when they were trying to figure out how they were going to get out of the situation in the museum, Alondra says, "Well, what about Bay 12?" And George's like, let's not go there now. Let's not go there. So
I didn't remember that.
Me neither.
Yeah, that's actually when they're trying to figure out what they were going to do, and they ended up stealing the cloaking device.
Right
at that point. When they were trying to figure out what they were going to do, Alondra says, "What about Bay 12?" And Jordan is like, "Oh no, let's not go there yet."
I missed.
So, I
still haven't figured out how the Enterprise D, because that's supposed to be, I believe, the same space station. Like, it's supposed to be the same one from Search for Spock. Like, it's not just one that looks like it. I think it's supposed to be the actual same one.
What are we talking about? Are you talking about the D? What are you talking about?
Space station.
What is now the museum.
Gotcha. Uh-huh.
I believe it's supposed to be the same one that was formerly docked around Earth in Search for Spock.
Okay. All right.
And I noticed on some of the interior shots where we see from the D perspective within the space station, the interior does not look the same.
Wow.
I know the D is bigger, but the interior looks smaller itself than as it appeared in Search for Spock. That was one thing. But the other more important thing is I do not know how it fits through the bay doors. Because as you recall, the Enterprise A, or the original Enterprise, barely squeaked through with the nacelles when Scotty was opening the door. But somehow the D passes through.
Well, wait a minute. Was that the problem? Was it because of the size of the door, or was it because they were closing at the time?
Well, it was a combination of both. But the door, as it previously existed, definitely couldn't accommodate a D. And like later at the end of the episode, The Last Generation, when we see the D parked in one of the rings,
Yeah.
you can clearly see the hangar door like right there, and it's like there's no way that it's fitting through that opening.
Maybe they expanded Bay 12 for
There you go.
industrial purposes.
Now the newer space station, like where Frontier Day was happening,
Yeah.
I believe on that model you see like multiple hangar doors, like some that are more narrow and some that are wider to accommodate bigger ships. But I don't see that on the museum space station. But whatever, not a big deal. Not a big deal, to be honest. And it still is a bit curious to me, like Search for Spock, that you can have just 6 or 7 crew like command an entire ship like without any other assistance.
Yep.
But whatever. I mean, we accepted that in Search for Spock. I mean, why not accept it with the Enterprise D?
Yeah, and I will say, I echo your guys' feelings with that. I love that scene. That was one of my favorites for this episode. But in the back of my mind, I was wondering. I was like, that's a pretty big ship. Can they really all just run it themselves? But I also wanted, since we're coming to the end of this episode, I paused on a scene here where they had a line that I loved, where because Picard's group is separated from I guess Beverly's group, if she's leader of that little maintenance deck crew. And when they finally pair up, Deanna Troy's like, I've never been so happy to see so many wrinkles.
Oh, yeah.
And for whatever reason, I just love that line.
It's a fun one. It's fun. Yeah.
Yeah, there's. I mean, speaking of lines, Worf continues to have numerous zingers. But aside from his numerous zingers, and of course, the creme de la creme might be his threesome comment. But even aside from that, I mean, maybe this was just always the way, and I just haven't watched a lot of TNG recently, because Worf is definitely a combination of, I mean, the quips aside, he's a combination of the biggest pessimist amongst our legacy crew in this season. He's the biggest, like, and he's also like the one who lacks the most in social graces, like almost like how C-3PO is, like in Empire Strikes Back, like just says things out loud that you shouldn't say, kind of like how Data was. I mean, the original iteration of Data. And is this just par for the course for Worf, or did it feel more so in this particular season?
This is the TNG movies version of Worf.
Okay,
it's very much taking that train.
Now he had zingers in the series. You know, Captain, I protest, I'm not a married man. I mean, Worf had some funny stuff. He got funnier in the movies. You know, again, I always really liked the Insurrection. I mean, you know, I know the folks that took issue with that one. He was the funniest. You know, since other than this season, Insurrection, he was hilarious in Insurrection. Just the stuff that he was saying. But yeah, Worf is all.
Yeah, but he's been taking improv classes though since the movies till Picard season 3.
Well, maybe it's his zen. You know, it's centering that's bringing the hilarity out of it.
He's been hitting open mics.
But yeah, so he has been getting funnier But it's because people recognized his comedy potential in the series. So there were moments that he said funny things, and it was very notable. And they ran with it for the movies, and they carried it on with Picard. So
the way I remember Worf from the series in my rearview mirror is obviously he was tactical for most of the seasons. Whenever the Enterprise faced whatever anomaly or situation or battle or opposing starship, whatever Worf's first suggestion was, never choose that. Never. He always like spoke first. Like the captain, like, what are we gonna do? He always spoke first. He always had the most terrible one-dimensional plan idea before, like Riker would say something, or Data would say something, or Geordi would. Never ever choose Worf's suggestion. That was my takeaway from the series. He had to say like the most like dumb obvious strategy. But
yeah, well,
and this is jumping ahead a bit, but what do you guys think of them reigniting, or at least bringing up again, the romance with Troy and Worf there? I was very surprised to see that get a little bit of a little callback.
At what point? At what point did you notice that?
It was near the end of this episode, I believe, where Troy and Riker pair back up and they're having kind of a tender moment. And then Worf steps in and he's like, "Oh, seeing you again, it's been so great for me." And it's like, "Oh, what's this?" Do you guys remember that scene? Or
I think that was in episode 8.
Oh, was it in 8? Oh man, maybe I'm just getting them mixed up.
When they were on the scythe, and Carl spoke to this as well in the podcast we did last on Picard.
So yeah, I'm just trying to, because I want to make sure if we were talking about the same thing. Are you talking? Because there's that moment where Worf rescues Riker and Troy, and that's the first time he sees her.
Yeah, I think that was in 8. You're right. I don't know why I got that mixed up with these two, but yeah.
Okay, yeah, because I thought maybe I had missed another tender moment with them that I was like, but yeah, that I thought that was appropriate because look, we wondered what happened between those two. So just in a very short couple of lines to touch on that, I thought was a good plan. I mean, this is what we're talking about here. There were some important things that needed to be achieved in Picard, particularly in season 3. And throughout this season, Matalas and crew spent a lot of care and a lot of intelligence and a lot of depth and subtlety putting these pieces together, answering these questions and addressing all of that. So again, with this degree of care and with this depth, I was looking forward to how they were going to resolve the situation that our crew found themselves in. I was expecting the same degree of depth and novelty with how this whole situation was going to be resolved. I'm not going to say that I saw that with how things ended with these last 2 episodes. And I've been kind of tiptoeing around this, but I guess let me just jump in and say it right now. Eric and I, we've had an extensive conversation on many occasions of strengths and weaknesses of Next Generation. Just what it was like watching the series all throughout that time, and its highs and lows. And one of the things that I always said about Next Generation that I found a little problematic is that I could tell what time it was in the episode by what was happening. You just from the commercial breaks to with the peril to the resolution, it was like the clicking of the arms of a clock. You would know exactly what was going on based upon what time it was. It was kind of that way. With this final season of Picard, with the depth, the intelligence, the subtlety that they were able to do so many things, I did not feel the clock for the most part of this season, which I thought was really remarkable. That was yet another sign that they had matured in terms of how they were telling stories. Even though it was next gen and all of that, I did not feel the clicking of the clock the way that I did with original series. Until these 2 episodes. until 9 and 10. The clock came screaming back. And what was funny about it is, on one hand, I was a little disappointed because of where we had been throughout this final season. On the other hand, it felt sentimentally familiar. It just took me right back to watching classic Next Gen, that everything resolved so neat, so nicely, so quickly. And one of my favorite episodes, of Next Gen was Best of Both Worlds. And if you go back and you watch it, the first episode, the first part of the two-parter, takes us in some directions that Next Gen had never gone before. It was very aggressive. Next Gen was always about debate and negotiation, and we never even really saw space battles for the most part, right? It's all that stuff. Best of Both Worlds, we got space battles, captains getting jacked, ships getting cut up. It was just wow. Blew the doors off of how they had told stories and how they had done things in Next Gen. So when the conclusion of Best of Both Worlds was coming, I was like, how are they going to resolve this? They have broken the mold. They've taken it's in so many different directions. And then, when you watch Best of Both, whatever you think about it, and, in terms of groundbreaking, and we saw Borg and all that, whatever you thought about it, sleep is how we resolved. Nice and neat. We got the captain. Data hacked into the system. Sleep shuts everything down at the last minute. Nice, neat resolution. And in my opinion, far too quick of a resolution, given what they had set us up for in the first half of Best of Both Worlds. That mess, we were in utter peril. Everybody that we loved was down. Ship, the Enterprise D was there. Everything was getting decimated back on, Wolf 359. There's no way that you can resolve this nice and neat with, the resources at our disposal. And then we just got, Data hacking below Cutis, sleep, resolves everything nice and neat. That frustrated me. I still enjoy it. It's still probably one of my favorite episodes of Next Generation. But how quick and neat it resolved, it always really, really bothered me. So we find ourselves in season 3. And they've set up some complex scenarios. I mean, Starfleet is in peril. We got the hacking of the transporters. We've got, the changelings and the Borg teamed up. The scale of the peril is so great. There's no way that they're going to be able to resolve it quickly. It just, with the amount of time that we have left, there's only 2 episodes. How are they going to brilliantly, in a way consistent with the strength and depth and respect that they've given to the characters and everything? There's no way they're going to be able to resolve this so quickly. I can hardly wait to see how they're going to, with the same depth and intelligence and subtlety, resolve this with just an episode and a half left to go. How are they going to be able to do this? And you see what they did. Once again, it was too neat. It was too fast. It was too clean how they resolved it. I was disappointed, yet it felt so much like original series Next Gen. I couldn't hate it. It took me back to the clock. It took me right back to all that kind of stuff. So, I have feelings about how things resolved in these last 2 episodes of Picard. Given, everything that they had led us up to, everywhere they had taken us to. But when it happened, you cannot say that it is inconsistent with Next Generation and how Next Generation episodes and what things have done in the past. You cannot say that it is not consistent with how things have been dealt with in the past. So I got feelings. It felt familiar. It felt mighty familiar how things resolved in these last 2 episodes of the season. But I'm jumping the gun, but that's kind of how I feel.
No, but once again, you're not wrong at all, Carl. And I didn't quite make that connection to original TNG until you just spoke it into existence. And something else you made me think while I was listening to that was that it is quite remarkable that Vatic seemed like the nuisance that would never go away. And it took literally 8 episodes of this season to deal with her menace. And then we discover that the Borg and the Borg Queen is the big bad. And it takes about 40 minutes of screen time
Yep.
to resolve that.
Yep.
And then when you compare that imbalance between Vatic, like somehow Vatic was more formidable than the Borg Queen.
Yep.
Then it does make the pacing or the chapter stops, the clock, if you consider the season as a whole as a singular TNG episode, it makes the episode breaks like seem like they're not spaced entirely correctly. I mean, considering Vatic versus the Queen.
Yeah.
And it I just had this thought now, like it really does make it seem like Vatic should have been wrapped up by like episode 4 or something. And then the crew could have been the assembled crew, like on episode 5, if they had assembled by episode 5, could have been gallivanting around the quadrant trying to put the pieces together to deal with the Borg Queen or whatever. Or something, I don't know. In retrospect now, it seems like that would have made more sense and felt more natural than the way things really went.
I mean, if we just back up, I mean, I agree 100%. You know, it's what I felt immediately, because my fear of this came, flying back when I'm halfway through episode 9, and I know everything that needs to be done, and I'm like, oh no,
Yeah.
because I could feel that clock coming back again. But if you just back up, think about the depth that we had went through. I mean, you're just talking about Vatic, but I mean, think about the encounter, the Shrike, the loss in the nebula.
Yeah.
There was a richness in the pacing all up until like episode 7, where you got lost in the time of what was happening, and so much was going on in a way that felt rich, didn't feel rushed. We went some places early in this season that was really, really, really remarkable. So again, to find ourselves halfway through episode 9 and knowing everything that needed to be resolved and everything, I felt the ticking of that clock starting again. But given the depth and respect and novelty that they had presented, I was like, well, they are going to push this to the absolute last minute of episode 10, fill it chock full of how we are going to resolve this in a meaningful, rich, respectful way. We're not going to get that rush stuff, because even with the previous episodes in this final season, they did some interesting things with time in some of those other episodes. So I was like, all right, now they're really going to exercise that skill and give it to us in this last, episode and a half, 9.5, and finish out 10. That's what they're going to do here. I sat back and I was ready. Show me, guys. What do you, after everything that you've done, how are you going to do this in a way with the same depth and respect that you've taken us to this point? That's how I'm going in to 9.5 and into 10 here.
Whew.
And there's another piece that we haven't really mentioned too much, because we kept wondering, there was so much intrigue building up to this about what is the changeling side of this plot, and for them to just completely fall out, and it turned out that I guess the changelings really weren't involved with this. It was just that revenge piece for Vatic deciding to be like a henchman for the Borg Queen. I think them being gone.
Well, they were sort of blackmailed to be they were like the changelings, or at least the radicalized ones, the ones who infiltrated the Federation. They're basically the hand of the Borg Queen before the Borg Queen could really execute the main part of it, of her plan with Jack.
And for me, oh, sorry, go ahead, Carl.
I'm agreeing with you, Caleb. I know in the story that that's what they're telling us, and they make it very clear how the Borg Queen was puppeting the changelings. But given the depth and the time that we expended getting to know them and getting to know their involvement, I really expected more. They're very careful, and they do one other thing, which I guess is kind of respectful, which is when they are running the transporter scan in the final episode, and they are detecting that there are still changeling in Starfleet. That's a
Yeah.
tip of the hat to that it wasn't just so neatly resolved, but that is literally 8 seconds that they give to the conclusion of the villain that had been 3/4 of this season. So yeah, Caleb, I agree.
No, I agree too.
I was like, well, that's, I guess that's it. But they had done some interesting things with them, and I was expecting more. I was expecting more of that.
Yeah, I mean, I agree too. It just, yeah.
Yeah, and again, this is part of my bias, but I feel like the Borg Queen, there really isn't much to that character. Once you've seen her once or twice, you've seen all you're going to get. She's relatively boring. But when it comes to the changelings and what they've been doing post Dominion War, I feel like there's so much more room to expand that side of it out. So for them to just kind of throw them away for once again another dull Borg Queen plot, is like we've seen enough of this character. It's way overexposed in my mind. And it was a nice little touch bringing back Alice Krieg to do the voice, but having it be that same Borg Queen, and she's become like this, kind of like Palpatine in Rise of Skywalker,
Oh,
where she's just like stuck on this object. And
Somehow the Queen returned.
I have a lot more to say about that.
sure.
But go ahead and finish your point. I have a lot more to say about that.
Yeah, it's easy to see why they'd be able to beat her in just 2 episodes, because she seems so diminished and
Very.
kind of pathetic at this point.
Yeah.
So yeah, it just feels like a down note. We could have given a bigger ending.
Yeah, no, yeah. Whether you had your bias working or not, yeah, I'm on the same page with everything you said about that.
But like Carl was mentioning, I do think that the transporter assimilation was a great evolution on that, and that stuff is exciting just in terms of the concept, but yeah, not as exciting as the infiltration from the changelings. So
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, definitely a lot more work put into that until they realized, looking at their spreadsheet, that they would have no more budget at that point. They just had to wrap things up.
yeah, blue makeup's cheaper.
Yeah. So I mean, you mentioned a certain Palpatine, and this was kind of a big thought that occurred to me today. I mean, the pieces were there, but then it all coalesced for me today when I was rewatching these episodes. And yeah, this is another thing that I kind of don't like in retrospect about the season as a whole, or especially focusing on the end than the climax, is that I don't think I'm reaching too far, but I just started feeling too many Rise of Skywalker connections while I was rewatching today. Like this business of Jack being so special and having not completely known origins. I started seeing Rey in him and these
Oh no.
special powers that people don't quite understand or cannot explain what they are, where they came from. And then, Jack's obvious importance to the Queen and Rey's importance to the Emperor. And then
Oh no.
and then the anti-shock of seeing like the reveal of the Queen in this, and Palpatine in Rise, where it really feels like it comes out of left field, and it almost feels a bit desperate. And then also a feeling of Nemesis being the Last Jedi, and Metalis Abrams coming in with season 3. Like, I need to really fix and resolve like the bad taste that was left in our mouth with the previous official TNG entry. So I need to right a lot of those wrongs and get the endings and emotional resonance that we deserve. And of course, there's like the even more obvious connections of how are we going to take out the Borg cube, and And I mean, this is a whole other conversation, but the idea of the Enterprise D flying through the interior of the Borg cube like it was a starfighter.
I just need to say, in the baddie universe, you could have the designers of the Death Star contact the Borg Queen and say, okay, listen, if you're going to build a giant enemy superweapon, what you don't want to do is build your access shafts as big as the Millennium Falcon. To which the Borg Queen says, hold my beer. Because, you know, if you're going to build a giant enemy superweapon, you probably don't want to build corridors in it precisely the size that of your Nemesis's ships can navigate around inside with limited weaponry to protect the supercritical core that's in the center. I mean, not that anyone noticed that there was a slight similarity between this, but, you know, just, yeah.
So, I mean, that part almost, I had like a self-preservation setting on my brain where I just switched it off for 5 minutes because that bit alone could have completely taken me out of the episode and the season. But I just hit that switch real quick and then I just sat there compliant.
Yep. I did. Flipped off my emotion chip for that as well.
Yeah, I don't like the idea of, yes, the tech specs, but also I don't like the idea of such a large vessel just navigating like a fighter jet. Like,
well,
wow.
Let's not forget that the Borg Queen has a sunroof over her very secure area, big enough for an entire Enterprise D to swoop in, turn, fly away. You know, if we have seen the design of Borg ships in the past, and I do not remember access paths of this cavernous dimension anyhow, but to have this very delicate queen to just have a wide open space immediately overhead of her private chambers, I'm flipping off the switch. We're not gonna analyze that. Let that go.
Yeah, they should have also just, what movie or episode was it? Like, they should have just might as well had like the joystick pop out of the L cars. When did that happen? In Star Trek?
Oh,
I cannot.
I think you guys covered this one on the podcast back during Q Who, maybe? I don't know.
Was it that one?
No, not Q Who. No, or maybe that was. I think that was the first one that we see the Borg.
No, we covered an episode where the concept of like Picard being like a pilot, but I think it might have been Kirk era, maybe, when like a literal joystick like popped out and the ship was like piloted.
Yeah.
Or I don't know. I have to Google that.
Yeah, no.
But anyway, I mean that was just the obvious Star Wars like connection.
Slight Star Wars connection.
But the other thing, like Rise of Skywalker, because we talked about the pacing of the last two episodes. That's one of my biggest beefs for whenever we do a proper podcast on Rise on one of the other feeds. One of my biggest ongoing beefs with Rise is somewhere near the beginning of the movie, Poe says, like, you know, the Emperor's going to have like his new fleet ready to go like in 28 hours. And that's like said very early in the movie. And I'm like, you're telling me that all this stuff that transpires is set within a 28-hour timeline? Not to mention getting the whole armada together at the finale. Like, it's absolutely bonkers. Like, if you've ever had a project at work and you go like a whole week and you've barely progressed, that's a whole week. This is saving the galaxy in 28 hours. And they're going to multiple planets and doing all kinds of shenanigans. Anyway, so that accelerated J.J. Abrams' pacing. Yeah.
Well, you know, to be fair, they weren't using work docs to coordinate their efforts, so you know that could accelerate things a bit.
True, but I just, the weird connections to Rise of Skywalker were just jumping out at me today, and I didn't really care for it. And then speaking of Borg Queen apathy, like what Caleb was saying, because I really have like similar feelings on that. I was thinking about when I was watching, because I had actually forgotten some of the finer points of these episodes until I saw them today. And there's the one point where, and I think this is a credit to the writing. They set up multiple times like you think we're gonna lose a legacy character or more. Like they really make you feel like not everyone's gonna survive this. And we get to a particular point where the D has to, pull the trigger and destroy the Borg cube, but they're assuming that their friends and Jack, could perish as well, and they're faced with this. And I know I've already seen it, but as I was watching it today, but the whole Borg sequence, like from the time they board the Borg cube till the time it's dispatched, which again is only like 25 minutes or something, or less. I just couldn't be bothered with that whole sequence. Not a care in the world. It came down to this moment where the D was coming in and they were facing a scenario where they had to blow up the cube, but in doing so, they could potentially kill their comrades and Jack and whatnot. And because me and Carl just had our conversation on the podcast a week ago about the season 2 premiere of Strange New Worlds, I was thinking now today, watching this finale, that, and I'll revisit this, I guess, when we get more into final closing thoughts of Picard season 3. But I'm very content with us wrapping up the TNG story as a whole. I mean, Star Trek Legacy aside, that's a different thing, but kind of closing out our original crew's stories for the most part, because I did not feel the stakes of that rescue at the end. Okay, yes, of course, I felt it a little bit more when I was watching the episode day one of release, but it was just kind of like, all right, like the TNG is now the past. I respect it, I love it, but it's the past. And because me and Carl were just talking about Strange New Worlds a week ago, there's a scene that has similar stakes. It's not Borg, thank God, but there's a similar scenario, a similar Kobayashi Maru moral situation. Am I going to do this thing and potentially kill my comrades or not? And I was thinking how much more that situation resonated with me in Strange New Worlds. And we discussed it. It's not like a perfect episode or anything like that. But just that moment, I really felt the emotion in Strange New Worlds. And I don't really feel it to the same degree in this particular situation in the finale. And I think it's because, even though ironically Strange New Worlds chronologically happened first and is older, I still perceive Strange New Worlds as like the future storytelling of New Trek. And I feel more invested in still getting to know those newer retro characters than to still hold on to the TNG characters. And I just thought that was kind of weird, that because I know a lot of Legacy fans, at least from what I see on YouTube, etc., like Picard season 3 is the bee's knees for them as far as Paramount Plus is concerned, and Strange New Worlds is kind of like, yeah, it's all right. But I guess I'm in.
Really?
Yeah, I would say generally, but I am much more into the Strange New Worlds vein, and I feel the resonance more of happenings with those characters. So I don't know. That was just a weird thought that occurred to me today while watching that scene.
Yeah, and I think some of the difference too is knowing that this is the end. Like, even if they did kill off one of the TNG crew, I mean, this is kind of their last hurrah anyway. So, would it really make that much of a difference going forward?
Yes. Yeah. I mean, yes. You're saying basically what I was thinking.
Yeah. So,
Eric brought it up earlier, and I want to reiterate the way that they were telling the story, the way that they were arcing some of the storylines, made it feel very strongly like some of the crew was not going to make it back after this mission. When you're watching it the first time, given their unusual storytelling, the way that they had done things, and the fact that it was supposed to be the end of the series, there was an additional gravity to a lot of the things that were going on, because I said, well, this might be the end of the series. I mean, this is the end of the series. This is the last episode. We might even lose some crew here. I thought that would have been a very bold choice to lose some of the crew in this final episode. I thought that would have given a lot of the buildup and a lot of the stuff that we had seen, the heft, the gravity that we've been building up to throughout the season. When I was watching it the first time and I saw the stuff that was happening, again, my clock, right? And how easily everything's typically resolved with the next gen episode. I was like, wow, are they actually going to break the clock this time and do something where we lose a real crew member here? The way that they told the story left us to believe that. The goodbyes, the long looks at the bridge, all of the final speeches, all of that felt so final, and I thought would have been a bold choice for how to wrap up the series. They did not do that, and so on rewatch, when that that's not going to happen, the emotional investment is dramatically less, because how neatly all of that is going to be tied up.
I will say, I am glad that they didn't kill any of them. I don't really feel like this story needed that. I don't feel like these 2 episodes would have. I mean, maybe they could have earned it, but it may have just felt like a cheaper, kind of like Shaw's death. It was like, oh,
Well,
like we could have had so much. I mean, we probably wouldn't see these characters go forward, but for these 2 parts here, I don't know if they're good enough to really justify killing off one of the characters in them.
at the very least, I thought there may have been a situation where perhaps Patrick Stewart, the actor, wanted to close the door once and for all. I thought that
Right.
could have been a possibility for
Right.
him. So,
Right.
Yeah. But I do want to highlight that I really do enjoy seeing all the crew back together. There is that kind of different dynamic now, but I think they lean into it and they make it fun. And all these actors seem like they're having a lot of fun being back together again and enjoying being on that old set. And that brings me some joy as well. So
yeah, I may have said this before. I can't imagine these actors like going forward in the future falling apart, like with their social relationships with each other, the way that seemed to happen with certain people with the original crew,
yeah,
who all seemed like they were always getting along when they were making movies together. It's not until more recent times and social media times that there seems to be a rift between certain actors that goes on to this day. What was I can't remember if this was on a podcast or this is just me talking to some of our other podcast friends, where Walter Keane. Did I mention this in the last episode?
We talked about
that we recorded. Oh, okay. In that case, I don't want to revisit. I don't want to revisit it if we just talked about it in the last episode. Strike that from the record.
Yeah, but speaking about him, we didn't even mention his little I don't know, what would you call that?
Great grandson as president cameo.
Well,
Yeah, kind of a weird one, but
okay, hold on. I thought it was weird at first, and of course the message kind of harkened back to A Voyage Home when there's that distress signal, don't come here. We got problems. We got whale problems. But obviously I heard the voice. I thought, oh, that's Chekhov. And my first thought was, is Chekhov still alive? I know McCoy lived a gosh darn long time in the Star Trek universe, but still, this is 30 additional years or so from that point. And so I thought, so it's Chekhov just like really long lived? Like, oh, it's his son. Oh, it's Chekhov doing his son's voice. And I thought, oh, okay, that's cute. But it wasn't until a couple days later that I realized the significance of the name of the character
Yeah.
being Anton Chekhov. I didn't get that on day one. I didn't get the connection.
Gotcha. Yeah.
When I got the connection 2 or 3 days later, then it felt quite poignant, quite like impactful. And then I totally respected the decision once I made the full connection of Anton.
Yeah. No, yeah, I thought that was a really classy move.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I almost forgot about the grief of losing that actor, because I remember that was something that shaded my experience watching that movie in the theater, because there's like, as I remember, there's like perhaps 2 throwaway lines that seem like they were edited in such a way in Star Trek Beyond as to reference the known passing. I don't know if it's just coincidence or not, but I felt it in that movie, and I kind of forgot about that because it seemed like it's been so many years, because it has, since that movie came out. And yeah, and by the way, we were just talking about all the Borg Queen stuff and all the climax, and I can't remember the exact runtime when it gets resolved, but it's kind of midway or something through this episode 10. And to be honest, I was glad that, fine, just rip the Band-Aid off, blow up the Queen, and let's just have everyone always makes that joke about the multiple endings of Return of the King. But to be honest, I never signed off on that joke. Because while there are multiple endings, I like those parts. Those are like some of my favorite parts of the movie. And seeing that they dispatched the Queen and there was something like 20 minutes left, yes, I was like, yes, thank you. I would rather have this, like this denouement or tying things up. So I was glad about that.
Yeah, and it makes sense because, this isn't just a season finale, it's a series finale. And so you kind of want everything to be wrapped up nicely. So I honestly wish they had it more time. This is my favorite stuff. Once we end the plot and just kind of see where everyone ends up, I think that's some really fun stuff and feels more in line with what we got in the first 8 episodes.
So there were some cool things, and I'm sure we'll expound upon them in a moment. But do you guys want to hear what Metalis, what more he wanted to include in the final moments of the episode, or the second half of the episode, these closing parts that he could not do due to budget constraints?
Sure.
Okay. So, of course, we know that Seven is made captain of the Titan that gets rechristened as the Enterprise G. And when she attains the rank of captain, Metalis really wanted Kate Mulgrew, Janeway, to be present there, like to pin like her rank on or something. He really wanted that to happen, but they couldn't bring on any more actors due to budget because they couldn't pay them, like any more guest appearances, combined with the fact that even if they could have paid for some, all these different actors, even the ones who made it on the show, they all had such different conflicting schedules that it was very difficult for scenes that included multiple characters, like in the same room at the same time. So that was another constraint combined with budget, is they just couldn't get people available at the right time to show up, to shoot these types of scenes. So he really wanted Janeway to be there at her promotion.
I was expecting her to be there. I noticed her absence.
Yeah. He really wanted to have some type of cameo of Kim being a captain as well, like independently. Like he really wanted an inclusion of Kim being a captain in the finale. But same issue, budget and scheduling constraints. And this is a weird one, or a little bit. He also intended to shoot a scene where, they would start recovering some of the bodies who had been like kidnapped by the changelings. And he intended for there to be a scene on the Intrepid where they would like find like the real Tuvok like in a wall closet or something.
Oh.
But not only that, but I saw this on a Metallis interview. Not only that, but the real Ensign Ro as well. Like they were going to recover like
Oh,
Tuvok and Ensign Ro.
huh.
And when I heard that, I was like, WTF? What?
No, that's crazy.
Are you telling me your intention was for her to survive, but it didn't exist because there was no budget to shoot that and scheduling conflict? Oh, I don't know. I don't know how I feel about that because
Yeah, then we got lucky. Oh boy.
that's what Kayla says. But
No, that.
I mean, we had different words when we talked about that episode prior, me and Carl.
Oh yeah, the episode was great, and I love seeing her back. But it would have hugely stepped on it if they had just undone it in the end. It would be like during the trial of the Time Lord, and suddenly Perry isn't dead anymore. She's married to King Arcanos.
Which is one of the greatest things about that episode, by the way.
Yeah, I realized part way through saying that how ridiculous a comparison it was.
And no, it's a great comparison because I think it's perfect to have that in the Doctor Who episode. And even though you are correct narratively, it would take all the air out of what happened earlier. I would be okay with it.
I don't know if I would.
There you go.
Okay, I would. Carl wouldn't, but I would because I want me more Ensign Ro if it could even be possible. I don't care if it breaks the emotional impact of thinking she died, like Chewie in Rise of Skywalker.
But I will say, I love seeing Tuvok back. I think his scene with Seven, that was just a beautiful scene. I was welling up with her little getting the final officer's review by Shaw. I love seeing him again, and kind of wrapping up that arc between the two of them. They'd already kind of wrapped it up with his death, with him recognizing her and calling her 7 of 9, and seeing that final little note. I thought was really nice. It did make me sad that they'd killed him off and we're not going to see more of him. But for coming full circle with that, I think they did that really well. And I loved Tuvok's line when she's like, "Oh, I'm resigning," and just the way he said, "Resignation denied, Captain." I thought he just delivered that so well. I love this guy.
Yeah, that was nice.
You're not wrong about everything you just said. I saw a mile away. So that kind of hurt the emotional impact for the scene for me. I mean, I totally dig it and I appreciate it, but I saw exactly where that was going. I knew there was absolutely no way her resignation was going to be accepted.
Yeah.
Yeah, I knew where it was going. I did not know we were going to get Shaw in. So I knew where it was going, and I was looking forward to seeing how they were going to do this. I thought Shaw was a great touch in that moment, and they pulled it off very nice. I thought that was a very powerful moment.
Yeah, and P.S. If they continue with Legacy, bring back Tim Russ as much as you can. I always loved his Tuvok, and I think this older version of him, I think I like him just as much, if not more. So I hope we see more of him.
He was terribly underutilized on Voyager.
Yes, agreed. And I also like, it's just a brief little, pretty much a joke, that now Troy is Data's therapist as he's learning how to process all these new emotions. And she's just bored. She's not even paying attention. She's looking up vacations. I thought that was a funny little bit there.
The Data 2.0, his portrayal of his evolution, I think is spot on. I can actually see Lore in his expressive humor. This Data 2.0 is snarky, and it's like, if Lore was cool, what would have happened? It's I really feel it. I see he really is the amalgam of the two dominant personalities. Of course, others sprinkled in, but Lore made him better. In the end, it's the contractions, it's the the humor, it's the passion that Lore had that was out of control and out of balance. That now that it's integrated into Data is making him a rather complete person. So I like Data 2.0. Well done.
That totally makes sense about folding in a bit of lore into Data. But you mentioned the contraction thing. I was thinking about that when I saw that upon rewatch, because I thought how preposterous that this this android of the 24th century can't just add a subroutine to make contractions to sound more natural, because boy oh boy, when they conceived Data in 1987, they did not see ChatGPT coming, because ChatGPT makes Data seem so archaic in so many ways.
Oh,
Like it doesn't make any sense. But headcanon explanation, I guess it's probably because of Daystrom and
yeah.
the episode of TOS, that in this Earth timeline, the Federation just has such a fear of artificial intelligence of any kind that they probably go overboard with like those Asimov like robot rules. Like they probably have like 4,000 robot rules that every artificial intelligence has to abide by, that causes it not to be able to adapt into contractions and things of that nature. I guess that's the headcanon explanation, but otherwise it just seems so it's like archaic that something so advanced couldn't do something so simple.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah, no, I got no defense for that. I got no defense. Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, from a story standpoint, we needed something to remind us that he was less human.
Yeah.
So, so that's what they're doing, and it's an easy way to do that, other than him throwing 3PO arms around whenever he moves. They just remind me you're a cyborg. But yes, no.
You're totally right, and perhaps it was because I was literally a kid, in the late '80s, but that I just completely accepted it. Like, oh yeah, it makes sense. Totally makes sense. This artificial life form wouldn't be able to pick up the nuances of humankind. I had no idea what was going to happen in the next 30 years in real world technology. It totally made sense to me in the late '80s, early '90s.
See, they should bring back Brent Spiner one more time for another Soong character. Just have one who's like an English teacher and he just hates anyone who makes those contractions.
It's going to be my least favorite episode of Strange New Worlds whenever a relative shows up. I'm
yeah, it's got to happen.
I'm not. No.
Please no.
Couldn't be more against that.
I'm
trying to be positive. And don't worry, when we eventually get to my closing statements on all this, but okay, the crew's all back, and I know they even address it in conversation about nepotism and Jack. But I like them chastising him for jumping into the captain's chair on the bridge. I like that. But then I don't like when she says your place is going to be right here as special counselor to the captain. I didn't like that. For someone fresh, like as fresh as fresh could possibly be in Starfleet, that screamed of nepotism, of like, family friend relation. Like if I was just Joe Schmo, Ensign Joe Schmo on the new Enterprise, I would just be like, God damn sure, how the fuck? Like I would be so mad in the real world if someone just came in and just sat right there next to the captain with almost zero experience in Starfleet.
Yeah, and something about it just felt outside of like Star Trek continuity. It's like suddenly we just have this guy who's, not really a Starfleet trained guy, and we're just making up this position for him. That just struck me as a little weird. But I did like his energy. He had like a kind of cocky young Kirk kind of vibe. So I was like, okay, I wouldn't mind seeing more of this side of him, but
no, I do like that too. I and it's funny because I was just saying last episode of the podcast, what happened to the counselor position. I think that could be really interesting. I just don't think Jack would be my choice. And that just seems strange. And furthermore, I don't see. This is when I start pretending like Star Trek is real, because I'm still Ensign Joe Schmo here. This idea of the captain and first officer being like exes, I don't know how I feel about that either from a real world perspective. And it's so funny because, spoiler, the same dynamic exists on the Orville.
Oh.
And I guess I could excuse it more in the Orville because even though it is a serious-minded show later on, I can still take things more with a grain of salt in Orville universe. But I just can't in mainline Star Trek, or that just does not seem right. Even if they're even if they're able to compartmentalize their past with each other, you still have to think there's a certain degree of conflict of interest, like when something goes crazy at some point, or a serious decision has to be made. I don't know. That just seemed a little bit too convenient. It's not a big deal, but that's why. Hey, I'm cool. I like that Seven got her captaincy, but I still need Shaw back to ruffle everyone else's feathers and not make them all feel so comfortable.
Yeah, I mean, you're dragging me to say something negative, but the one thing that makes me not excited for Star Trek Legacy is the idea that Raffi's going to be in it.
Yes, and it's Raffi too. I forgot. That's the other kicker with this dynamic, because similar to Jack, like, how do you get this prestige position?
Oh, God.
Well, technically, she was working with Starfleet. What do you call it? The Black Ops
Section 31. Yeah.
So there's that line where she and Worf are talking, and she has been doing these missions and doing all this work and not being able to tell anybody. So she has a history of dedication to Starfleet that no one's known about because she's been doing all the secret ops, right? There's that moment where she says, all of a sudden all the screens lit up back at home and everybody got to see my accommodations. And Worf's like, oh, who could have done such a thing? So she's got some actual rep that, would make the position plausible, but still the X. Look, you got two X's. You got the X with Raffi in 7. You got X Borgs with Jack in 7. I mean, this is a rogue ship they got flying around here with these two in charge. You don't know what's going to happen.
Absolutely. Yep. Yes. Absolutely. In the 3 center chairs of the bridge, you have like 3 versions of a cowboy mentality. It seems pretty wild. It seems like they'd all get themselves blown up in the first month. And I'm not trying to sound negative or coy, but and I totally appreciate Raffi's accomplishments. I totally remember that part and get that part. And she does deserve a nice position. I just don't know if it's being 7's number 1. And also, Raffi, I'm just saying, she did accomplish those things, but she's one of those people. There's a phrase like failing upwards.
Oh,
I know, but I'm just saying, like, she did accomplish things, but she sort of like stumbled into her accomplishments like in an amazing fashion. And maybe you score special points for that, but yeah, she just she defied the odds.
Well,
I'm sure you score points after being part of the only crew around to save the Federation and the world.
And technically, she did try and tell them, a couple of things. It was, the headquarters that got blown up. She was trying to tell them. So I think they said, well, maybe we should have listened to her.
Again, give her a promotion. It seems like a weird place to end up.
And I'll say also, you mentioned that scene with Worf telling her that he did that for. I thought that was actually a really nice scene. It was one of the first times I liked their dynamic.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So
yeah. There was a hug. There.
Yeah, and I like seeing Crusher back in the role of Starfleet Medical, in charge of it. I was like, okay, that's nice to see that she's wound up back there for her last bit of her life.
No, it's cool, but I felt like some of the wind was taken out of the sails, since they had said before that she had that position before already. So it took away some of the accomplishment that she just resumed her old position from before. It's nice. It's not. I'm not trying to sound like a downer, but they're like, yeah. I think is it Jonathan Frakes who's narrating like the passage of time?
I believe so. I can't remember for sure.
Yeah, and he says, and Dr. Crusher is now head of Starfleet Medical. He says it like it's this like amazing thing, but I was like, but she was head of Starfleet Medical. But anyway.
Oh,
well, she's been 20 years away. Not bad.
There you go.
I guess it's like Kirk at the end of Voyage Home. He's the captain of the Enterprise. Like, okay. That's cool. Oh, I was gonna say something else about all that. Keep talking, it'll come back to me.
Yeah, and another bit I quite liked was the Titan being rechristened to the Enterprise G. I thought that was another really kind of beautiful continuation. It was like, oh wow, the legacy continues. I like that. Pun unintended, or not pun, but legacy call out.
I did not see it coming.
Me neither.
While at the same time, I always thought it was weird that they were hammering, I mean, in the show and in outside the show in promotion, like how the Titan was like a neo constitution, and I don't know if it was, I think it was Metalis perhaps, who just always liked the look of the Kirk Enterprise, the movie Enterprise, and kind of wanted something inspired by that, and so while I didn't expect that was going to be the new Enterprise, because I didn't think they would downgrade. We talked earlier about how the Enterprise in TNG era has always been like a flagship, and I just assumed they would continue that, and we would have like a brand new G that was this even more futuristic interpretation of the F. And so for them to just rechristen the Titan, I thought, oh shit, I didn't see that coming, even though all the groundwork had been laid. Like it's I didn't see like the most obvious thing in the world.
Well, I don't know if it was so obvious. I don't know if it was so obvious because, again, the issues that you're bringing up were my concerns also. I didn't think they would go backwards in design like that. The way they were setting it up, I thought they were going to call it the Picard.
I think that was a possibility as well.
I was expecting Jean-Luc or something.
Yeah,
I thought it might. Well, yeah, when they said they're going to rename it, I thought it might be like the Picard or something.
Mm-hmm.
Another funny thing other people noticed, other reviewers, was so I think it is like a year passes. There's a time jump, at the end,
right?
And people noticed that like the Legacy crew were all still wearing the exact same clothing that they were wearing a year prior. And,
oh no!
And Metalis said it was totally budget and time constraints. Like, he was aware of it, but they just couldn't just make all brand new costumes. And, obviously in real world, they just filmed it, back to back, like the same day. And so it just literally wasn't in the budget. He was just hoping nobody would notice that.
Oh. Hey, I buy it. They're getting up there. Maybe they're not changing their wardrobe as much.
Yeah, it reminds me, I said this at one point, and I've always thought this about Kirk in Search for Spock and Voyage Home. Like, we finally see Kirk in his civvies, but he's like one of those guys, like in the real world military, who, like, even when they're off duty, they still have to dress like they're in the military. Because it always struck me that his civilian clothes look too similar to his uniform in Search for Spock. And like, he just can't be off duty.
Well, that somehow seemed appropriate to me.
Yeah, but I'll say all this little post plot ending, I think it's a really nice kiss goodnight to the TNG crew, the original run of them, and a great little backdoor pilot for this new crew. I think all that stuff comes together really well. And then we get that little the nice little end bit where it's like, what's your kind of captain catchphrase going to be? I'm not sure how I feel about that, but I like that they ended it with her not saying anything. I thought that was a smart choice.
Yeah, that was fun.
Smart choice, but I still want to know what it's going to be. And once again, are Star Trek production crews talking to each other? Are they on speaking terms? Because it's weird that moment happens in this episode, and then in the very next new episode of Trek that airs in Strange New Worlds, they play on the same gag.
They do.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Oh, wow.
So what is it? I forget. What is that? What is that called? What is that called when like someone comes up with the same invention as someone else on the other side of the world at the same time? What is that phenomenon called? You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, serendipity, kind of whatever. Yeah,
there's some terms.
Convergent.
It's like Kevin Bacon effect. It's not that, but there's some term for it. And is that what's going on? They're just coming up with the same ideas simultaneously, and they're just not talking to each other and realizing.
I'm telling you, it's Kurtzman in the corner. Hey, do this idea. Didn't you just do that? Let's try it again.
I can't believe he'd do that. There's got to be a wall between these groups.
I agree.
I would be flagging this stuff left and right. Look, they need a Filoni to just say no, you get it on this show. Flip a coin. Only one of you are going to be able to do this.
I mean,
there you go.
The different teams working on Lower Decks and Strange New Worlds, etc. Are they like the different networks, like in the Anchorman movie, where they're like rival gangs to each other, and they just like have fights in back alleys? It's weird. It's weird. What do you guys think about the post credit scene, which I almost completely forgot about today, but fortunately I left it running. Let the episode run while I was on my phone.
I got mixed feelings. Here's my issue. The only thing that I really liked about season 2 of Picard was the pending mortality of Q and how they said goodbye to him. I thought that was such a powerful moment between he and Picard. The concept of Q having to confront his own mortality. I thought that out of everything from season 2 of Picard, that was the most powerful. To step on that with that epilogue. Even if they were going to bring Q back, even if that was going to happen, I would have preferred that be a surprise in the new series versus, teasing it the way that they did. This episode of Picard had, I counted them, 6 good endings in it. 6 of them. Good, what would have normally been a solid ending for a normal series. 6 of them. I am rounding down. There were technically 8, but I'm saying 6 strong endings with this one. They did not need to put that on there. No. I don't think that helped, in my opinion. I don't think that we saw Jack's position aboard the new Enterprise, and how he was going to evolve and hopefully grow into the spot. Everybody else, they had a solid ending. I don't think they needed to go there.
Yeah, I definitely didn't need the Easter egg, and yeah, probably better just to have Q just unexpectedly reappear, like if there was a legacy season. Although I already know how Paramount publicity is, they would tell us 13 months ahead of time that Q was going to be in it, so it still wouldn't be a secret anyway. And then I was thinking, because in universe it makes sense to me that Q might want to hang out with the Picard progeny. That makes sense. And even though Q potentially ended as we saw in Picard season 2, I was explaining this on the Star Wars podcast we did not too long ago, or somewhere, how, like in Doctor Who, because of timey-wimey, even if you eliminate the Daleks or Cybermen at some point, they still exist in the universe, just in a different time, like prior to their death. So Q would obviously be like that as well, because this would essentially be a younger Q meeting Picard Jr.
He actually says something to the effect of, "You think so linearly."
Yes. So that makes sense. So in universe, that completely works. Now, out of universe, I wonder, but I'm of two minds about this next bit. Would it have been a good opportunity, like, to recast Q with a younger actor or actress? But then the other side of that coin is, though, you have to assume that a large faction of fans are still in it for the nostalgia feels to see Tom Delancey continue in perpetuity.
Look, I love Delancey and I love his Q, which is why his demise and what he went through in season 2 was so powerful to me.
Yeah.
There are other Q, there are other things. If you wanted to recast with the double air quote, there are plenty of other Qs, and I'm curious as to what other Qs are up to. I think that would have been welcome. But again, I'm putting my foot down. I don't think they needed to do that as the epilogue for this.
Yeah, and I don't think they needed to
Yeah.
either. But the fact that they did include it again feels like a weird J.J. Abrams Ryan Johnson peeing contest where, oh really, you did that? Well, I'm going to undo that like right now. Like it weirdly feels that way to me.
Yeah, I wondered if it was a desperation ploy of like, oh, we don't know if this new crew is going to be enough to pull an audience.
Yes, that too.
Yeah, that and I, yeah, Q is not what would bring in the new generation. I mean, I know the
Yeah.
importance of it, and I like him as a character. No, I don't think that's. I don't.
Yeah, and I was going to say the same thing, that this, if you're going to bring in a Q element, give us a new one, some fresh blood,
Mhm.
and just I think that would have been a really great opportunity to, and if they did want to explore the continuum in the new series, I think that'd be a really smart thing to do, but maybe not with the same old Q. We've
Right.
had a long time with him,
Yep.
so
I want to say I almost forgot that I briefly met John Delancey about a decade ago
oh
at a big Doctor Who convention. I mean, he was a guest. He was on the guest list, but I just remember it being funny because even though, of course, Doctor Who fans there's a lot of crossover with Star Trek, so obviously everyone knew who he was. But that being said, he was treated very much like a civilian, if you know what I mean, at the Doctor Who convention. Like there was so much more people, trying to talk to the Doctor Who actors, even those of 30, 40 years ago. So even though he was Q and he was Tom Delancey and he's a very tall man in real life, I just thought it was funny that he was more treated like a civilian than he would have been if he was at a Trek convention. Just saying.
Well, know your crew, know your audience.
But yeah, I mean, I think we covered kind of all the big things here, and I definitely got some things to say in my final thoughts, and when we finally rate this, I don't know. Do you guys have anything else before we get into that?
I think I'm good.
When I think about back over these last 2 episodes, I made a big point out of saying that it felt rushed to me. It felt rushed given everything that we had experienced throughout the season. But like I said, there are multiple parameters that I'm experiencing while I was watching it, and to see finally a complete send off of our crew, to know where they were going, to know what happened to them, to see them even before the Borg resolution here, really get to grow into who we expected them to be. It was good to see that. Little things. Jordy was a captain. Jordy got to be captain. It's just Beverly's is a pirate Beverly with her firing skills and all of that. Each character, even Ouija Troy came back, right? Okay, so remember when they're trying to figure out, they're about to blow, they blow up the Death Star core and they're flying out and they're like, oh, there's no way we're ever going to be able to find them inside this giant Borg ship. And Riker sends out his farewell to her. And then all of a sudden she's like, I know where they are. Well, remember, as outrageous and as convenient as that is, once again, Troy's Ouija skills have been defined and established in Nemesis, right? When they were trying to find the cloak ship and she's using her, empathic ability to feel out into space to try to find where they were. We've seen that happen before. So, all right, I'll take it. We'll make that work. But anyway, to get to see everybody really flourish, even if I felt it was a little rushed, was still an emotionally impactful thing. It was fun. that's, a lot of the stuff I was talking about, I was taking issue with. But if you step back and you just want to see the crew together for one last adventure, there's a lot of fun, a lot of tying up loose ends, a lot of tipping the hats to things. Data's got a hunch. We're going with Data's gut. The whole time through the entire history of Next Generation, Data has had to deal with the illogic of everybody around him to try to go on faith with these humans, and he didn't understand, and because they were his friends, he accepted their irrationality and did his best to take a ride. Finally, there's a moment where Data is going to go with his gut. I got a feeling I'm going to go with my gut. And the crew's like, I don't know, machine. I don't know. We get to go with Data's gut. He's having fun. Little moments like that where I didn't like that we're dealing with the Borg again. I didn't like how rushed and forced things. I didn't like how neat and tidy everything turned out to be. But for each member to truly get their moment the way that they did was an emotional thing that, I could sidestep a lot of this silliness and a lot of this, other stuff that was a little forced. It was fun. And that's, that's how I kind of feel about, this final season of Picard. So much better than what we'd experienced earlier in the season. It did some things that I found very surprising. But I enjoyed it, despite all the stuff and everything I've been nitpicking about. There was an emotional side to this that it was good to see the gang together one last time, and and really, really getting to succeed. So that was good. You want to go back to Star Wars? One of my biggest complaints with Star Wars, the original trilogy, and how things wrapped up. My favorite thing about Star Wars was seeing the gang together. Han, Luke, Leia, the robots getting into trouble and trying to figure their way out. You realize we only got to see that in Star Wars. They never brought the posse back. And Jedi, there's the moment in the beginning of Jedi. But other than that, one of the things that really bothered me at the time, and even now I look back, is the most fun of Star Wars was seeing the crew hanging out together, seeing them trying to figure mess out, having bad plans, trying to resolve stuff together. The gang together is what was so much fun about Star Wars. We only saw that in Star Wars and a little bit of Jedi, and that's it. Everything else was pain. Everything else was separation. Everything else was awkwardness. And that bothered me about Star Wars. And we never, ever got to see them together again. So, finally, here we go. Next gen. It's been long overdue. Of course, the best part of it is when the gang's together and doing stuff. It was forced. It was contrived. It was too quick how it all happened. But at least, we got to see the gang together one more time on one big mission. And that had an emotional resonance to it that, despite everything else, was fun. That was.
No,
fun.
You are so correct on this part of the assessment. That is one of the greatest things about the Picard series is getting to have them all together. It took too long, but it happened eventually, and they had their moments as a crew, and it was, I guess, in retrospect, a unique writing tactic to set it up so it's literally just them. During the climax moments, Raffi's not there, not even Seven is there. It's just the core crew, and the thing you said about Star Wars, the original trilogy. I didn't think about it at the time back in the day, but I have been rewatching all the Star Wars movies heavily in like the last 3 months or so, like multiple reviewings. And that has jumped out to me recently. The exact thing you said about how they're really all together just for the first movie. And it's part of one of the best things about the trilogy. And furthermore, in the sequel trilogy, we get a double whammy of angst as it pertains to that, because we practically never get the originals all together at the same time. we almost do by circumstance, but certainly not in the same room during the sequel trilogy with the originals. But even with the newly created characters, I thought like Finn and Rey, and then even Poe, I thought the interactions we got with them in Force Awakens were pretty darn cool. And even they were never or hardly ever really together in the remainder of the trilogy. And that was a double whammy.
Yep.
And
Yeah, just crazy.
It's painful. Well, those are your final thoughts, Carl?
Yeah, I think.
What's our unit of measure? Anyone?
Is this rating the series as a whole, or these 2 episodes?
Kind of like these 2 episodes, if we consider it like a 2-part finale. And if you want to give an overall rating, by all means, in addition, if you want.
Yeah, I don't know if I could, but
Well, you don't have to.
well, just to echo some of Carl's thoughts there. Yeah, this series as a whole, as a last goodbye to TNG, I think that this is overall very satisfying. Sure, the kind of, if you want to put it, third act, the last 2 episodes, the big climax, yeah, it doesn't live up to the potential of the rest of the series, I don't think. But that doesn't negate how great all the stuff leading up to it was, and how great the little end piece where we're kind of saying goodbye to everyone. All that stuff, I think, is still rounds out to being superior to any of the TNG movies. And this would probably come in either second or third place of the best overall stuff from the post 2009 that we've gotten with Star Trek. You know, maybe the first season of Strange New World would come above it, maybe Star Trek Beyond, but I would say those 3 are easily the best with this third season. So despite the weaknesses, I would absolutely give this a high rating.
But what's the rating? What's the unit of measure?
That's what I'm trying to think.
I need to know.
Well, you have to tell me the unit of measure first, because I won't know
of course.
I won't be able to rate it proproperly without that. Of course,
Exactly. That's why it's crucial. What do we got?
How about cards at the end of their little poker game? Since they end on that, of course.
Poker cards, poker deck, poker chips,
Deck of cards.
Deck of cards. All right. And I'm surprised they let that visual of them playing cards run through the entire roll credits.
I love that. I really, really love that.
I'm fine with it, but at the same time, I was just imagining the actors on set play acting for like 4 minutes. Like it seemed weirdly awkward, like if I was in the room for some reason. But okay, deck of cards. How many are you giving it? Like let's say the 2-part finale, Carl.
I'm giving it a 4-3.
4-3.
4-3.
And this is just for the last 2 episodes, right?
Just for the last.
Does 4-3 mean 4.3?
Yes, 4.3 as well.
Okay.
Well, if we're introducing that kind of thing going on, I would give it a 3.9 for these last 2 episodes.
3.9. Okay.
Yeah, because the overall, it was not a fully satisfying. The plot feels like it was almost throwaway, but the stuff that they needed to nail, the landing, I feel like they did that so well that it's almost a 4, but not quite.
Yeah. See, now that I know that it's a deck of cards, obviously we can split the decks, but I'm still going to be a little bit more traditional and give the finale, because I actually do have to factor in like nostalgia points, which gives it a little bit of a boost. Like the Enterprise D scenes and other situations and multiple endings. I'd probably, oh man, I guess I'll break the deck this time. I'll say 3.75 just for the finale, but probably the series as a whole.
Oh man,
series as a whole, 4-3-3, because what you guys said in your closing statements, I echo everything y'all said. Even though it sounded like I was being pedantic and McMongy about the minutia of these 2 episodes and the little cracks, especially when I watched it the first time and throughout the whole season of 10 weeks or whatever. This is definitely one of the shows, Star Trek or not, where I had that weekly anticipation, like dying for the next episode. And overall, I thought it was fantastic and engaging. It's looking back in hindsight, Monday quarterbacking, where I can get to the minutia of things that seem a little bit odd, but overall, I still think it was really fantastic and one of the strongest seasons of Star Trek ever. And all the things you guys said, and just a perfect way to give closure to this era, and all the good things. Tune out now if you don't want to hear anything about tech specs. But just a weird denouement to this conversation. I mean, it's a credit to the production team because I can feel the smaller budget for this season of Picard in terms of Picard the show, but also in terms of they don't have the money, for instance, that Strange New Worlds has right now per episode. And I can tell. And I think they pull it off really well, kind of like Wrath of Khan, which is another movie that overall looks perfectly fine, even though they were working on a shoestring budget themselves. They made it work. And I think that's what they did. And they accomplished it with Picard. I think they did a lot with a little. Because another weird tech spec detail, I'm pretty sure Strange New Worlds is produced in 4K, but Picard and Picard Season 3 was produced in 2K. And if you really get out your magnifying glass and look at the ship models, you can tell. I'm not saying that's a detriment. I'm just saying I weirdly noticed. And, Strange New Worlds just got a 4K release, which looks fantastic. And they're not going to have a 4K release for Picard or Picard Season 3. And I really think they should, even if it wasn't produced in 4K, because there's still other benefits. And it was produced with HDR. And I don't know if you guys have seen, but they're going to release later this year a Picard Legacy set is what they're calling it. And it's all Blu-rays, and it includes all the adventures of Picard on screen, the entire TNG series, the entire Picard series, wow, the entire Generation movie series. They almost got it all. I think they're leaving out one Picard appearance on screen. I think they're leaving out the premiere of DS9. I think that's the only thing missing. But what they should do is include it as like an Easter egg bonus item in the set, and who knows, maybe they will. Because on the Strange New Worlds set that I got recently, I didn't know it was going to be there, but like on the disc 3, in the bonus features, they give you the entire Balance of Terror episode of the TOS. And so I thought that was a cool little inclusion on Strange New Worlds. So maybe they could do that with DS9. But I still think, though, come on, Paramount, Viacom, CBS, whoever handles this, the people want, at the very least, a Season 3 4K release of Picard. I'm telling you they do. Just print it and let them be sold. Sorry to waste everyone's time with tech specs, but I will leave that at that.
Well, I can't tell you how shocked I am that you would want a higher resolution of something released. This is so unlike you, Eric.
I'm just saying. I mean, I got, because I have all the other Star Trek 4K releases, and when you have the TNG movies, like, you need to have that Picard Season 3 bookend. You need it, and I don't want it to be in Blu-ray. So, yeah.
We'll send a letter to the editor.
And I was trying to pay him a compliment again for making it look so good, even though I can tell they stretched their budget to the limit.
Yeah, but have we come to the end of this discussion?
Yes, we have. And who knows if Star Trek Legacy is in the cards. We all know the Kurtzman Starfleet Academy is in the cards.
Oh boy.
Oh man. I can't remember now if that was supposed to take place during Discovery era or Picard era. But either way, it's Kurtzman's baby, so that's the scariest part of that whole endeavor. But hey, I'm not going to judge it. until I actually watch it. And of course, while we will try to sneak in more classic, and by classic I mean anything pre-Paramount Plus RBG episodes, we're definitely going to get hot and heavy with Strange New Worlds for the rest of season 2. And don't worry, I guess one of the plus sides of the writer's strike that's happening and ongoing at this time. So now Strange New Worlds season 3 is going to be delayed, and/or many other things. So we may eventually have this large gap in new shows that we'll just be able to concentrate on classic Trek for a while on this podcast eventually.
Yeah, yeah, maybe the movies finally.
Oh yeah, in some shape or form. And stay tuned in future podcast episodes covering Strange New Worlds. We may add an old podcast friend from Mostly Harmless Cutaway. Someone may be stepping into the RBG world for the very first time. So we'll see what happens.
Nice.
But closing out the show today, this is Eric.
This is Carl.
And this is Caleb.
And until next time,
I hate to say it, but it looks like this is the end of the road.
Beware Romulans bearing gifts.
Sorry, I just jumped in there at that.
who said that?
They said that I think it was around the poker game at the end.
Oh.
I think it was Riker that said it.
Oh.
Yeah, and I wrote it down. I was like, that's a good ending.
Yeah. I forgot to say, when Riker was narrating, for some reason, I just liked the timbre of his voice just during the narration. I asked ChatGPT to create opening statements and closing statement for RBG. I'm not going to use this, but I just want to read what we came up with.
Awesome.
So these are meant to be openings for the podcast. Welcome, fellow space explorers, to our cosmic journey through the vast universe of Star Trek television shows. Set your phasers to stun as we delve into the captivating worlds, compelling characters, and thought-provoking themes that have made Star Trek a cultural phenomenon for over 5 decades. From the original series to the latest incarnations, we'll navigate the final frontier, seeking out new insights and celebrating the enduring legacy of this iconic science fiction franchise. Engage!
Oh,
That's pretty good. That's pretty good. For a machine.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, for sure. And in closing statement, as we reach the end of our warp speed adventure through the Star Trek television shows, we bid farewell to the stars that have inspired generations of dreamers and doers. From the bold ideals of the Federation to the intricate plots and captivating performances, Star Trek has shown us a future where humanity strives for unity, explores the unknown, and tackles complex social issues. As we return to our own reality, let us carry the spirit of Star Trek with us, embracing diversity, embracing knowledge, and boldly venturing towards a better future. Live long and prosper.
That's pretty good. We just need the what's that guy's name? The Kornheiser, the Star Hoppers theme music playing in the background. You remember that guy that used to be on PBS talking about the stars on Saturday nights? His name was something Kornheiser or something.
I don't think we had that in my PBS region.
What? I thought it was national. Well, because all the stuff that was like that, all the PBS channels picked up because it was cheap.
Right.
And he was, and it like Saturday nights, he was sort of like an amateur astronomer, and he would talk about the constellations and things that were up there. But he had this goofy like 70s like keyboard synthesizer music that was playing behind him.
I would remember this if I had seen
it.
Because I would have been all over it. It
was awesome. He was awesome. I mean, it was so corny. I love this guy. He was like what's this guy? The guy that paints. The guy that paints in old PBS stuff with the big hair. He was like that guy for astronomy.
Why can I not think of his name?
I know.
What the hell?
Yeah, what is that name?
See, this is age, gentlemen. This is age because we ought to know this guy's
At least
name.
that show, Bob Ross. At least I saw Bob Ross.
There you go.
This other guy, I've never heard of this.
No, I mean Bob
What
Ross.
thought his name was again?
Oh, he had a goofy name like the Star, like Wrangler.
I think it's gonna come up here. Yeah, Jack Horkheimer.
That's him. Yes.
Wow, what a name.
Horkheimer. And the music that he would play in the background. Oh, it was so zen. It was so new age. It was so
It's like a low budget Cosmos.
Yeah. It was like a LSD version of Cosmos.
Oh my God, this was from '91. It looks much older than that.
It is. That's the tail end of his run. He was doing stuff for like 20 years. So if you see 91, that is the end. Well, near the end. No, he was running for a long time. Jack.
Oh my God, the show is called Jack Horkheimer Star Hustler.
That's it. Yes. Yes.
Wow.
Yeah.
That is some crazy music. You're not wrong about that.
That is what we need. See, if you play that while you read the Chat GPT stuff, it's just going to nail it. That's going to be perfect. It's going to be perfect.
Man, if I didn't already have a theme for my podcast, I would.
Look, everybody knows it. That is his theme. So Arabesque. That's what the name of the song. That everybody knows his theme.
Yeah, it's the porn version of '80s synth sci-fi.
Yeah.
Theme, basically. Yeah, I would. This would have been imprinted on my brain, but I've never come across this guy or this show before. Yeah, definitely not in my region.
Oh, too bad.